When the demure Carol Krazan is introduced to a dashing construction foreman, she seizes the opportunity.
They, for all intents and purposes, looked like they were going to go together hand in hand into their golden years.
But she looked for people she could take advantage of for her benefit.
And her sinister side has no limits.
Hey, Alton.
My brother would tell me stories. She was cruel and she was tormenting him.
I'd have kept my mouth shut. You don't step between a man and his future wife.
It was just easier to, ignore the elephant in the room.
But the depth of evil Carol will go is far beyond everyone's darkest fears.
He thought that she would be a good wife.
She was a predator. How do you prove it? How do you disprove her story?
Born and bred in the Lone Star State, Roy Joe McCaleb is handsome, rugged, and ready for anything.
Roy Joe was very personable, and he liked everybody, and everybody liked him.
My father was a man's man.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
He took care of his family.
The urban cowboy.
He worked hard. If there was a party or a gathering with the family, he was usually going to be in the center of it.
Hailing from the oil fields just east of Houston, Roy works his way up to become a foreman, overseeing the construction of oil rigs.
I was talking to Margaret, and, we've been...
He even helps his younger brother, James, land a job at his firm.
My husband was having heart trouble. He couldn't do physical labor. And Roy Joe just called him and told him that they had an opening in the storeroom.
You give it a thought.
I'll give that a thought.
Roy tried to help everybody.
But behind Roy's confident smile is a world of private pain. He and his wife, Sharks Glean, have 3 children. The 2 eldest, Alton and Bridget, suffer from a rare genetic disorder that impacts their nervous system.
Both of his children who were disabled were mentally all there. They were fine, but they were, by their early 20s, were confined to wheelchairs. They had a lot of problems with mobility and getting around.
It was hard on the whole family. There wasn't much medically that you could do for that. There was really no treatment for it.
Over time, the pressure of work and demands at home take a toll on Roy and his wife. In 1978, after 22 years of marriage, the couple amicably divorces.
If those children had been healthy, they'd have been together until they died. Because they were very close and they had a good marriage, but after that, things just went downhill.
They didn't know how to deal with it. People didn't go to psychiatrists, didn't seek out help back then. It was hard on all of us.
Fortunately for Pam, the couple's youngest, she's already married and living on her own. 21-year-old Bridget has to be moved in with their grandmother, while 22-year-old Alton is able to live in Houston with Roy.
They was big Dallas Cowboy fans. When my daddy would come home, they would buddy up and watch TV together and stuff. He was crazy about my daddy.
How you doing, buddy?
Doing well.
Yeah, anything you need, let me know, okay?
It's not long after the divorce that the McCaleb family faces a more devastating blow. In January 1981, Bridget dies from complications of her condition.
When Bridget died, it was very hard on our family. We had never had to deal with anything like that.
I can remember when I got the phone call and I called my daddy and told him that Bridget was gone, and he kept telling me that everything's gonna be all right. My dad kept everything inside. He didn't talk about things like that.
2 years after the loss of his daughter, Roy's brother James decides it's time for the 49-year-old to start anew.
My husband just thought that he needed a wife.
Roy, this is Carol. Carol Roy.
James introduces Roy to 41-year-old Human Resources Administrator Carol Krazan.
She dressed real nice. She was pretty.
Roy Joe had the personality that he never met a stranger. He didn't really have any trouble meeting people, and he still had his looks. So he didn't have any trouble getting the women either.
Right away, the two hit it off.
They probably found some real common ground in the fact that they had gone through divorces, had children that were growing up, and needed somebody.
What do you say we get some dinner this week?
I said, all right.
Yeah, then it's a date.
Okay, cowboy.
Hello? Hey, Dad. Hey, Dad. What's up?
I just want to let you know I've met somebody.
He told me that she's a good woman, that she'd been married one time. She divorced and she'd been single for many years. And he felt like she was real stable.
After 5 years of it being just him and Alton, Roy believes he's met someone special to care for him.
Love you too. Bye.
A few weeks later, Carol and her 19-year-old son, John, move in.
So how's the police academy, John?
It's a little tough with the training, but it's going good. It's gonna be great.
It's very impressive, John.
When the rest of Roy's family meets Carol, they aren't impressed.
The first time I met Carol, she just sat there and didn't participate in the conversation, so I thought she was just real shy.
We went over there, but she just never did say anything very much.
Carol, where'd you get the blouse? It's beautiful. I love it. You remember where you got it?
I really had to force myself to make conversation with her.
But Roy's happy, and 2 months later, in January of 1984, he and Carol agreed to marry.
I was really surprised when my husband come home one day and said, Carol and Roy Joe are getting married.
You know, I was thinking we have two wonderful families.
We do. So I started asking him questions about where they was going to get married. He said they're going to get married in Roy Joe's house, and we're going. I think that Roy Joe, because he did have a long time marriage the first time, that he wanted that again, and she offered that to him.
I wanted to like Carol because she was going to be my sister-in-law, you know, but I couldn't get close to her. She just wasn't that kind of person. I'd have kept my mouth shut. You don't step between a man and his future wife.
Linda isn't the only one who's keeping her misgivings to herself.
My father thought he was in love with Carol. After meeting her, being around her, I did not feel like she was the woman my daddy wanted her to be, or he thought that she would be, that he was looking for something that wasn't there.
Pam and the others will see that Carol's cold demeanor is just the tip of the iceberg. Because this soon-to-be stepmother will prove she is wicked to her core.
The son's lying down in bed. She's talking sexually to this kid, and it's not right.
He was at a real impasse. Either his family had to go or Carol had to go.
In autumn of 1983, divorcee Roy McCaleb meets single mom Carol Krazan, and the two quickly fall head over heels in love.
It seemed like they had a sort of whirlwind romance. They met at work. She moved in very quickly, and for all intents and purposes, looked like they were going to go together, hand in hand, into their golden years.
But the quiet and unassuming office manager has a dark side, and Roy's disabled son, 25-year-old Alton, is her first target.
There were signs from the very beginning that she wasn't connected to Elton, that she looked down on him, that she was hurtful and hateful to Elton's situation.
My brother would tell me stories, things that she would say and she would complain about, him and making him very, very uncomfortable living there with her in the house.
Alton, can you move a little bit? I can't see.
She seemed like she didn't want to help take care of somebody that was a pain to her.
I still can't see. Can't you move?
He was just so uncomfortable with Carol because she made him feel unwelcome in his own home.
And the longer Carol and her son live there, the more she acts as if Roy has sold her a bill of goods.
You're in the way. He is always in the way. I can't take a step here with this thing, Roy! What? Roy, you baby this child!
There was no way that she did not know that Alton needed to be taken care of. It was just sort of assumed by me and my husband both that she would help take care of him.
She won't help me at all.
Alton keeps secret the worst of Carol's slights, confiding only in little sister Pam.
No, can't tell Daddy.
With their father's wedding fast approaching, Alton and Pam unite to send a message.
I'm not telling Daddy.
I spoke to my brother. He did not want to go. I did not want to go, and that was our stance in showing our father that we do not approve of this.
I just want Mom back.
My dad never said anything or questioned us about it.
Roy clearly wanted to reestablish a family, and it was sort of beyond his control that the family underneath him was splitting, that there was this, rift that he wasn't able to solve, and he was probably at a real impasse as to how to even deal with it, because he loved Carol and he loved his children.
Please exchange the rings.
Despite his children's decision, Roy and Carol move ahead with the wedding.
Shall live?
I do.
I was hoping that it would work out. He did act like that he was happy. The rest of the people that was there was happy, but she still was distant.
After marrying Roy, Carol would have had the ability to sort of lift the family up to be a pillar, but instead, it seems like she sort of took everyone down a notch.
Carol's aloof behavior seems to also run in the family. Her son John does what he can to avoid interacting with the McCalebs.
Her son would never say hi or anything, and to me it was weird because I'm like, well, you're my stepbrother now.
John, can you help me? I think I'm stuck on something.
Roy, who had known loneliness, he lost his daughter. He'd married hoping that maybe he could build his family back up. And somehow the family wasn't working. It wasn't coming together. It wasn't gelling at all.
I don't think my dad liked it, but I think with everything that he's gone through, it was just easier to, ignore the elephant in the room.
He probably wouldn't have had any idea how to deal with getting through having a relationship that was falling apart, because either his family had to go or Carol had to go.
As Carol continues to feather her nest in Roy's house, any pretense of civility goes out the window.
I can remember going over there to see Roy Joe, and we wouldn't even go in the house. We'd stay outside and talk. Because, if you go in there, she's not going to talk with you or visit with you anyway. Neither one of us ever said anything to the other, but I felt it, and I know he did too. After Roy Joe and Carol got married, the rest of the family got together, but we just didn't see them. They just weren't there.
Less than a month after the wedding, family members notice Roy's behavior changing. The honeymoon period with his blushing bride is already over.
I felt like Roy Joe got quieter. He was outgoing, but something was missing. It wasn't right, and he knew it. I guess he didn't really know how to get out of it.
I've redrawn up my will.
In an effort to improve his relationship with Carol, Roy promises her security for the future.
He signed his will, leaving her everything. I'm sure from Roy's eyes, marrying somebody who'd been married before and didn't have any real security in her life. He probably felt the need to rescue Carol.
While Roy invests himself deeper and deeper in his marriage, he's unaware that the torment Carol levels on Alton is getting worse.
Hey, Alton.
My brother told me that when my dad would go to bed, sometimes at night, she would come in and read to him out of erotic magazines. And to us, we felt it was her way of being cruel to him because, you know, he's young, in his early 20s. He has sexual desire just like any other male would.
You can look at me if you want to. So then...
The son's lying down in bed. He's physically impaired. You know, he has a hard time doing anything, I imagine. She's talking sexually to this kid, and it's really weird. It's not right. To protect himself, he would hide in the bathroom and lock the door at night and sleep in the bathroom because he was afraid of her.
Despite the terrible stress, Alton is adamant about keeping it a secret from his father, hoping Roy will remain happy. As a result, other family members have no idea about what's really going on.
I didn't hear till much later. It hurt me really bad when I found out about it.
I'm sorry that I didn't pursue it any. I just really did not want to cause any problems between Carol and Roy Joe. I did want it to work.
It's hard to live on your own, and you're looking for that support from another person. And maybe initially, you know, everything's sunshine and happiness, but she was someone that knew inherently how to take advantage of people.
While her exploits until now have been unpleasant, Carol Krzan is only getting started.
Roy, you baby-dick child!
And no one is prepared for what happens when she dials up her deviant behavior.
I was afraid if I came in contact with her, I would be going to jail.
"49-year-old Roy McCaleb has been married to second wife Carol Krzan for less than a year, and already what he thought would be his path to happiness has turned into a rocky road.
Alton, can you move a little bit? I can't see.
Carol has driven a wedge between Roy and his family, and her wrath is especially brutal for her disabled stepson, Alton.
You want some food, honey?
One time, when she was going to work, she stopped and she said, "You know where the food is over there in the refrigerator?" I mean, there was no way Alton could get to the kitchen and the refrigerator.
Very good, Alton.
Instead of telling his father what a terror his stepmother is, Alton asks his mother to help him out.
My mom worked over in the area, and she had access to my daddy's house, and she would take food over there for my brother, and she always took care of us kids.
And by all accounts, Roy wants to do the right thing too. He just doesn't know how.
He was a very loving, very warm person and wanted to be a good dad. On the other hand, Carol seemed to be almost trying to split up the family.
Finally, after 9 months of living with Carol, Alton reaches his breaking point.
He couldn't take it anymore, and he asked Mom if he could come stay with her.
The son probably didn't want to add to his father's hardships. No, then he was being a good son, you know. I'm sure he thought about what he should do. In his mind, he made the right decision.
Roy is bewildered to see his son go, but with Alton out of the house, Carol seems much happier. Equally as important to Roy, the situation between he and his children shows signs of improvement.
Alton would call me, and I would go picking up, and we'd go over there and we'd visit my dad. My brother and my dad would sit in the living room, maybe we'd be watching a football game, and Carol would just kind of be coming in and out.
As life for the McCaleb family settles into a new norm, Roy sinks himself into his work until an accident on the job almost sinks him.
He was on a barge and a crane swung around and hit him and knocked him in the bayou. And he hurt his back.
The injury is extensive enough that the 51-year-old Roy needs surgery. Carol joins him at the hospital, but her bedside manner leaves Roy's family unimpressed.
I was at the hospital with other family members, and as usual, she's cold, very flat, no emotions or anything.
How's Daddy? He's gonna be okay.
We went to see him, and she was there. She didn't act very concerned then about him. But by then, I think I had adjusted to the type of person she was, so I didn't expect very much out of her.
I'm really feeling drained by all
Roy's
this.
hospital stay is short, and when he returns home, visiting family sense that all might not be well with Roy's marriage.
Because of his back injury, Roy was heavily medicated. And because of that medication and, maybe the dynamics of the couple, Carol and Roy were sleeping in different rooms.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Concerned about her father's well-being, Pam lends her support with almost daily visits.
Yeah, thanks for having me over. I appreciate it.
How you doing?
He started talking, and this is the first time that he's ever opened up to me about anything.
Thanks, man.
And he said, I just want to let you know that the only woman I've ever loved is your mother. He said, but Carol's a good woman. And he says, anything ever happens to me, he says, she knows my wishes.
Roy doesn't offer any other details, and his daughter doesn't pry. But Pam is rattled by signals there's something truly amiss.
I felt that something was going on at that time. Why is he telling me that? He's telling me that he's not in love with this woman, but she's a good woman. I felt like, well, he's not happy, but
She said something.
he didn't want to be alone.
Made him really uncomfortable.
After 2 months away on disability, Roy is looking forward to returning to work.
How you feeling, Roy?
Man, back's doing pretty good, but
On the afternoon of September 22nd, 1985, a friend comes over, and Roy is in a spirited mood, enjoying the autumn weather.
haven't been out of work.
It's on a Sunday, and Roger wasn't supposed to be drinking anything because he was on medication, but they were sitting there drinking anyway.
Carol joins the two men, and the conversation turns to guns.
She brought out her gun at that time and wanted to have target practice in the backyard.
Wanna shoot?
All right.
Yeah.
So they went out there, nothing to them, they shot the gun.
Good shot.
It's love.
Well, Roger, after all that alcohol and his medication too, he was pretty tired. He went to sleep. He was out of it.
Later that night,
Hello?
any veneer of domestic bliss will be lost forever.
What happened?
She said somebody broke in the house and they shot your daddy.